All right. Thank you very much.
No worries. And I'm just going to go through a few slides just to orient everyone, just to make sure everyone kind of knows what we're talking about. We have a number of people here from the Glen Carlin community who are very familiar with the context and site situation of the site. But for those of you who are not, um, if we can move to the next slide, the proposal is for VHC to purchase 5.8 acres, which is approximately half of the site of the former urgent care facility, which is now owned by Arlington County. And they propose on those 5.8 acres to build a new rehabilitation and behavioral wellness facility. That's what it looks like from a conceptual plan. To give you a sense of the color legend, the proposed facility would be in the areas that are magenta, reddish, and with the blue coloring. And then the remaining pieces, the yellow 4.5 acres, as well as the 1.3 acres in green, would be in the public domain and remain owned by Arlington County. The 1.3 acre there, which is a wonderful scenic easement, would be maintained as part of this deal. And the 4.5 acres would be available for future planning for public uses. If we can go to the next slide. The larger overview of the site situates all of the assets that are close by. The Moses Ball Spring, which is a valuable natural and historic asset, would remain in the public portion, so that would remain in public hands. You can see the scenic easement, which abuts the RPA. That would be maintained, so we could maintain that wonderful environmental resource. And you can see the proximity of this site to the Long Branch Nature Center, providing some interesting opportunities as we think about future programming on the site. We can move to the next slide. Oh, okay, I'll continue. So these efforts together are the result of many years of discussions regarding the challenges facing so many individuals and families who are experiencing depression, substance abuse, and other needs that require specialized and expert care. And as you may know, the current healthcare environment is causing significant challenges for both the healthcare organizations and those who are in need of care. And it requires us to really re-examine how to best work together to provide care and to meet patients' needs. We are very excited to have this opportunity for VHC Health and Arlington County to come together to find a really creative and impactful way to serve our community. I'd now like to turn the program over to Wendy Crawford, chair of the CSB, to talk about the Community Service Board's interest in expanding behavioral health services in Arlington. So Wendy, why don't you take it away?
Thank you so much, Chair Dorsey. Good evening, everyone. I do want to say a big thank you to the board for making this opportunity available to us as a community to engage about the VHC facility. And as you have already said, Chair Dorsey, there's been a lot of lead up to this moment and a lot of awareness over recent years of increasing needs, both in behavioral health and in substance use treatment. The Community Services Board is an entity that exists to support, advocate for, and give feedback on services for people with developmental disabilities as well as behavioral health needs. And we on the Community Services Board have witnessed firsthand with DHS staff the trend that is taking place at the regional, state, and national levels, which is specifically, it's a significant increase in needs. And I won't take anybody's time by citing a lot of statistics here, national statistics which support this, but locally, I will share with you that in Arlington here, calls to our Department of Human Services emergency mental health services doubled during the peak of the pandemic and have not decreased significantly since that intense period of time. And our local data on overdoses shows a 300% increase since 2019. So pre-pandemic, these trends began before the pandemic. It's important to note as well, as you already alluded to, Chair Dorsey, we're seeing these increased needs amongst our loved ones and our neighbors. And concurrently, we are seeing a decreasing trend in treatment providers. There are fewer hospital beds at this time than there have been in the past. There are fewer treatment facilities, and there are fewer providers in practice. So right now, for example, a person who needs treatment for mental health or substance use may be boarded or held in an emergency room for days pending placement in a hospital bed, which is a very distressing experience in itself for a person who is already struggling. Then, due to lack of psychiatric beds across the state, the patient can end up quite a distance from their network of support, their family and friends, their loved ones who want to be involved in their recovery. We definitely need more services closer to home, and especially for our youth. And I'll add an aside that I noticed that on this call tonight, there are several school social workers signed on to learn about this development. So we all know that Arlington is a progressive community, and we have a long history of really tackling challenges in order to ensure the support and well-being of our residents. And this is a time when a public-private partnership and collaborative engagement can literally save lives. We have had on the CSB a small working group, several members who are present this evening, who have met regularly with representatives from VHC for several years, working to collaboratively engage on the campus expansion on the main campus, to talk about behavioral services and what they look like down to the nitty gritty. This has been a really respectful and productive relationship, and we look forward to continuing that relationship and those efforts as this Carlin Springs project continues to develop and to take shape. And we will be seeking and sharing the input of our community members to ensure that any plans or decisions have the benefit of the diverse input and perspectives of our community. So thank you so much for the opportunity to speak on this important work tonight.
Thank you very much, Chair Crawford. And at this point in time, we're going to move into hearing a little bit more about the proposed facility itself. So at this point, Adrian Stanton and Melody Dickerson will take the reins, and Adrian will share some background about the site and about the project's long development history. And of course, Melody will talk specifically about the services that will be provided at the proposed center. Take it away.
Thank you, Kristen. I appreciate it. And thank you to everybody this evening for taking time out to join us. As Kristen said, I'm going to leave the expertise, the clinical expertise, to Melody to talk about what we're planning on the site. But I'd like to just start with a few comments about VHC's interest in bringing and expanding our mental health services. As Wendy mentioned, it's actually been, I think, now 5 years that we've been working with a very passionate and dedicated group of individuals that represent many different areas of mental health and interest within the county. And I think through those conversations, as we talked about how we can expand mental health services on the campus of the hospital, we kept running into problems of limited space, difficulty in being able to bring all the components we want. So when the opportunity came, and our appreciation to the county to work with us on finding a solution, obviously we knew this campus very well. We were there for a number of years with our urgent care operation, and the ability to start and create sort of the perfect solution to many of these healthcare issues for mental health, we were incredibly anxious to get involved and develop something. I'll also comment, I think, with regard to when folks heard that there was a signed LOI, and when you see a picture like what's in front of you right now, I think the feeling is, oh, well, everything's done, or it's been signed off on. And I want to assure everybody that's not the case. What you see is a conceptual plan. We wanted to just start to lay out to make sure that it would fit on the site. This by no means says that we have made final design drawings. Those all have to be part of what we submit as part of the 4.1. And we are starting to aggressively get into that with architects, many of who have been working with the group for the last 5 years. So as Wendy said, there was a lot of good things that the group came up with. We can use those as we talk about developing this site. But I wanted to assure everyone that everything's not done. We have a lot of work to do, and we're hoping to get a lot of input as we continue that process. Just one final note, although we haven't finalized plans, we're doing some rough estimations. We had to do that as we developed a plan to present to our board, the hospital board, to get their approval to move forward. Our estimation is we anticipate we'll be investing about $80 million in this project. And that's inclusive of not only the construction, but then all the things that Melody has to do to make this operational. And with that, I'm going to turn it over to Melody so she can talk and fill you in on what we're actually planning at this site. Melody?
Thank you. Next slide, please. Okay, there we go. So today, Virginia Hospital Center is very much an acute care hospital. So these patients generally come in through our emergency department, and when they're extremitous, then we admit them, just like we admit all kinds of patients for physical ailments. We do the same thing for mental health and addiction treatment. So really what this program is going to be able to provide for us is really an expansion of services and really taking our care across the entire continuum. So the building itself that Adrienne has described is really going to be a 112 bed facility. And what that's going to bring for us is, first and foremost, a new service line to VHC that currently doesn't exist, and that's adolescent psych. So we'll have 24 beds of adolescent psych inpatient treatment. We'll have a 24-bed adult unit, which is a net increase of 7 beds, and then a 24-bed recovery and wellness unit. Again, expansion of that for 6 beds. What will remain on this main campus will be a 14-bed inpatient adult geriatric psych unit. And because those patients have just different needs, often concurrent medical issues. So having them closer to the hospital within these walls really makes better sense. And then the remainder will go to this brand new state-of-the-art facility. And then our inpatient rehab beds will also expand, and this helps support our mission of treating those physical rehab patients who are recovering from brain or traumatic brain injury or stroke or other physical conditions. Next slide. And so in addition to the inpatient treatment, we'll be adding 5 outpatient programs. So again, a new service line, the Adolescent Intensive Outpatient Program, will provide that after-school psychiatric support that some adolescents need that, again, prevents that hospitalization. There'll be an Adult Intensive Outpatient Program, which is like a day program for the adult patient. That person who might be suicidal but doesn't necessarily have a plan that can really get that intensive therapy and again prevent that hospitalization. We'll have continue and expand our adult recovery and wellness addiction treatment programs. And then we'll have an adult partial hospitalization program, which will, I'm sorry, that's the day program. The intensive outpatient program is intensive therapy. The partial hospitalization program is a day program for the adult patient. And then we'll be able to offer clinics as well. So just your typical therapy, again, all these things that ultimately prevent the hospitalization. So if you go to the next slide, you'll see that entire continuum that we're talking about. So if you go up on the scale, it's more acute. And if you go left to right, it's from lesser acuity to higher levels of acuity. So we're just really excited about this. It is a service line that, I've grown very passionate about being at this hospital and in this community. The leaders in these areas have just taught me so much about the crisis that we're in and the best treatment possible. And I know that that's happening today. We've recently made a significant change in our medical staff coverage for this area. We've invested in our own physician group and have hired our own psychiatrists, and that program is growing. And, I saw some data today, which just speaks to the improvement we see continually in our quality of care for this patient population. I'm just really excited to see this program grow. We have a psychiatrist who is trained and has years of experience in adolescent psychiatry. She's going through the credentialing process as we speak. And so we'll be happy to introduce you to her at some later time as well. But just a great day for VHC, and I hope the community can welcome this as well.
All right, thank you, Melody and Adrian.
Actually, Christian, I think Adrian has one more slide.
Oh, got it. Okay.
Thanks. I just wanted to very quickly kind of give folks a heads up on what we anticipate the timeline to be. As I mentioned earlier, we have to submit a 4.1 site plan application and use permit. That'll take a little while to put together and will involve developing some pretty detailed design plans as well as civil engineering plans, etc. We anticipate that we'll be submitting that somewhere late April, May timeframe. In the interim, that's when we'll be getting a lot of input as we put together those plans. We'll submit that application in May and begin the formal SPRC process. And I know someone's going to talk about that. I think Jill's talking about that in a little while, so I'll let her do that. But in addition to that, we have to get state approval as well. So we'd be increasing the number of behavioral health beds as well as rehab beds. We're working with the state to figure out when that will be. The state does COPN review in certain batch cycles. The mental health cycle actually is a submission August 1. We're hopeful that they'll just say, instead of doing 3 separate COPN submissions, they'll allow us to do 1, and we think it would naturally be in that August timeframe. That usually takes, if it is not opposed by anybody, it's a 6 to 7 month process. If it goes in, if there's any opposition, it could go as long as 10 to 12 months. And then assuming we go through the review process and get that done by the end of 2023 or early part of 2024, we then have about an 18-month construction, 18 to 20 month construction. So we anticipate that this could be completed by the end of 2025 or at the very latest, early 26. I think that's it.
All right, so with that overview, as you can see, while the project as presented is fairly straightforward to comprehend. It is not just a relationship between Arlington County and VHC Health and the entitlement process of us. It's also subject to a regulatory framework that is beyond everything. And so in order to think about how our local entitlement and engagement process fits in with that, I'd like to turn it over to Jill Hunger to walk us through what this would look like to match the sort of timeline and end game that Adrian outlined. Jill, take it away.
Great. Thank you, Christian. And thank you all for allowing me to speak to this. So it's this site plan review process, and it's a lot of this is managed through staff, but then this SPRC, the Site Plan Review Committee, is a committee of our Planning Commission. So sort of walking you through this process again. The site plan review process is really, it's allowing us to review significant private and public-private projects that are on certain parcels of our land. And it's really one way that we are able to engage our community in the conversation and this county review. So we receive this site plan application, sometimes just a very conceptual plan, but then there's a preliminary site plan application that's made, and there's some back and forth that goes on to ensure that all of our regulations and requirements are being met. And then once that's accepted by the county, it sort of shifts into this active site plan application mode. And during that time, the county staff will be working together and forming an interdepartmental review of the project itself, and then also coordinating with our planning commission, who will be forming this committee, the site plan review committee. And they're going to be looking at membership that's really specific to this application. So it includes the planning commissioners, representatives of other advisory groups and commissions, civic association members, and neighborhood representatives. So really making certain that we have specific people at the table. There is a community engagement schedule that's established, and during this time, and I think Adrian alluded to this, is that the applicants are encouraged also to conduct these outreaches, this outreach to the affected communities. At that point, we shift to this online engagement, and you'll see in this graphic, I have a couple of areas where you sort of see the two call out boxes. And that's where we really are receiving that public input. So the first one is this online engagement that we offer, and we'll be posting all of the project materials, having a feedback form, and really allowing people to come, looking at topics including land use, architecture, some of the transportation elements, open space, and other elements associated with a site plan. And then we move into these site plan review committee meetings. They are open to the public. There's a select group that would be at the table. And it's really allowing these members to listen to the presentations. Typically, it's 2 to 3 meetings that are held. And during these meetings, they try to reach consensus. There aren't any votes taken. And then we sort of slide into this preparation time frame. And that's the opportunity that staff is in the process of preparing a draft county manager's report. And that would include a number of recommended conditions, one to mitigate this additional density that's on the site and the land use itself. There'll be public notices that are posted and advertisements that are run. And then depending on this the type of project, the site plan might also be reviewed at other commissions. We then go to our planning commission, and it's actually a public hearing. They take public testimony, and then ultimately the planning commission would make its recommendation to our county board. Both the staff, the applicant, and other commissions will make presentations to our county board during their public hearing. And Christian, if you want to add anything about that process, I'm finished with my presentation here.
No, you've said it well, and certainly there may be questions about it, and that will be welcome in just a moment. I think at this point, Brian, if memory serves, we are ready to move to any questions from attendees this evening, correct? All right.
Correct. Yeah, and actually, I think we have a question for the group, Christian, and that's
Yeah.
early
Yeah. What if-
insights and
Yeah.
perspectives. I can drop that question in the chat box.
Yeah, I'll say it verbally and we can put it in the chat. But at this point, really what we're desiring is that our engagement for this effort really be focused and efficient, because we would really like to bring this facility online and serving the community by late 25 or early 26 at the absolute latest. And for that to occur, Mr. Stanton outlined the sort of regulatory process that must be followed. And that means our local entitlement process needs to fall into that area so that it can allow them to submit the appropriate materials to the state for regulatory review. So really, we're giving you this early look so that we can have an efficient process throughout considering entitlement. And so at this point, we'd like to ask, what are the perspectives and interests and concerns that need to be raised before or during the public review process for this to be hopefully a concept that goes from a proposal that goes from concept to entitlement. So this is your forum to surface anything that is of note, of interest, or of concern.
And Christian, people asked about how we're going to do this. Can use the hand raising function, or if you want to put your thoughts in the chat box. We did have one question early on in the presentation about the orange line and the RPA area, and I don't know if that's Jill or Adrian or Michelle. Just people were curious. I'll try to put the map back up. What the orange line represented around the yellow area, I think, is the question. So let me just share this map. And I don't know who wants to take that, but it came up during the presentation.
Sure, Brian. I actually attempted to answer it. That what you were seeing, and I believe it might be actually one of the later maps. The red line is outlining sort of the property, but here what you're seeing is the resource protection area. Otherwise, we refer to it as an RPA, which you can see on the map. So it's sort of this area around our streams. Again, it's a resource protection area.
Thank you, Jill. Christian, you have one hand up there. Brandon.
Hello, Brandon. You can go ahead and unmute. And what's your question or perspective?
Thank you, Chairman Dorsey, VHC staff, and Arlington County staff for this briefing. I have some questions from our neighborhood association. They put some forth, the Glen Carlin GCA. One of them is, what's the timeline for the county use for the area that the county is holding for itself?
Great. I think the shortest, most efficient answer to that, Brandon, is TBD. We don't know. So in terms of sequentially, this is the immediate issue before us. And then at some point, we will, generate what are the interest in generating a process to consider the remaining portion of the site. I think one of the things that question implicitly brings up is that conceptually, at least, there needs to be some thinking about what might be some desired or, public uses that could be of interest that we could conceive of while we're going through the process of entitling the site, and being mindful of decisions made here for potential public uses later. But unfortunately, we don't have the ability to master plan the whole thing and be able to deliver the beds by the time frame that VHC desires. So we're going to have to somewhat look at this in a little bit of a stovepipe, but I think we can be successful with that.
Thank you. I hate to dominate, but I have a few more questions from the Neighborhood Association. This is quoting directly from one of the questions. According to the 2020 JLARC study, there's a critical shortage of adult psychiatrists and adolescent psychiatrists in Virginia. In addition, there's a critical shortage of licensed clinical social workers, licensed psychologists, and nurses. What is VHC's plan to staff this new wellness facility? And this is to the VHC staff, of course.
It's Melody. I'm happy to take that. I think that what we found in particular with the medical staff and the case managers group, because we did just greatly expand our capacity in this regards, moving from a grouping of just community physicians to really hiring our own. And what we're finding is that individuals are really wanting to find this. It's unusual today to have inpatient and outpatient behavioral health services being provided by a hospital, and to hire into those roles. VHC is known for their culture, and many of the folks that have come to work for us had interfaced with our organization through other connections within healthcare. And so when they were found out that we were actually posting these positions, we're very excited. Our turnover in our behavioral health unit, knock on wood, has always been very low, one of the lowest areas in our hospital, since we really demonstrate to our staff that, that we would invest in preparing them clinically and ensuring that they had everything that they needed to do their job safely. Our staff have really responded to that. So again, whereas other hospitals might have a huge vacancy in this area, ours is very minimal. So we have great connections with our local universities. We bring in new grad nurses 3 times a year. And so that's one avenue that we will use to bring in new talent as we expand services. We also have relationships with case management and do clinical practicums and that kind of thing. So again, we have 2 years to come up with our staffing plan and to secure those resources. And I feel really confident that we'll be able to do that.
If Melody,
Thank
if
you,
I
Melody.
could add just something else, Brandon, to your question. We think we have an opportunity to make this a national model of excellence. And as Melody said, when we started talking to our physicians and our staff about this, in addition to be very excited, I think the common phrase we heard from is, we'll have no trouble getting folks to want to come to this facility. So I really think it provides us an opportunity to not only bring a unique model, but I think we can make it sort of a national model of excellence that we can be very proud of.
All right, I'm going to throw in a question or two from the chat before resuming with some of the people who've raised their hands. Don't worry, we'll get to everyone. So from Naomi Verdugo, who loves the adolescent beds, but notes that she didn't see any substance abuse treatment being offered to teens. And is there a proposal to provide those kinds of services for adolescents?
Yeah, so I'll take that as well. The plan is to offer addiction treatment services to the adolescent population. We haven't developed that program as of yet, but certainly in light of some of the things that's happened recently, it is something that we definitely know we will be offering on an outpatient basis. For inpatient, we need to do more analysis on the needs for those services on an inpatient basis to see if that's something that we would want to add to this programming. And so we really are in the fact-finding phase of that thought process at this moment.
Thank you, Melody. Why don't we turn next to a question from Suzanne Petroni.
Yes, hi. I asked that question about the red line, and thanks for just confirming that's in the resource protection area. We live in one of those 2 houses that falls within that, which means we are direct next door neighbors to that facility, or what will be the facility. And I just wanted to note, you've heard from us already, at least the county board has, about some concerns we had about how the information was shared about this, but we're past that. I want to note that we, and I think most of the neighbors we're aware of who have shared concerns about the announcement and the property, do not have concerns about the fact that it is a mental health and well-being facility. We're fully supportive of that. You're not going to hear complaints from, I think, most of us in this community about what that facility is. Our biggest concern being literally next door, we see that building out our office and bedroom windows, is about the placement and things like lighting, traffic, sound, security, fencing, etc. So I guess maybe my question is, can we get on the site planning committee, or how can we best work with you to make sure that we, who are perhaps most directly affected in terms of being located closest to the facility, and our neighbors, of course, are heard on a regular basis and not just voices every few months when you do these hearings or these meetings.
So I'm going to ask Jill again to hopefully give you some comfort, Suzanne, about how the site plan review process provides an opportunity really to raise all of those issues and concerns, all the ones that you specifically outlined. That's the ideal forum for that. Jill?
Sure, thank you, Christian, and Suzanne. So again, this is a new process likely for you to undertake. And as I'd mentioned, typically around the table, there will be representatives from the civic associations. And usually what happens is there will be outreach to the civic association president. And oftentimes it's either the president or the civic association actually asks a specific person to come and sit on the SPRC on that specific committee. And then there's the recognition or hope that the representative to the SPRC then goes back and forth to their neighborhood and brings forward the concerns. So there's a little bit of give and take, back and forth conversation, both with the community and whoever's sitting on the SPRC, and then also from the, within the SPRC process. So there's that piece of it. And as Christian pointed out, there are a variety of topics that get covered during these meetings. Ranging from the design of the building to the transportation analysis that's looked at, to the landscaping around. The other pieces there are key points of where, rather than just being sort of a representative of the civic association, there are individual inputs. And that is the online engagement forum, and then also during our commission meetings. So the Planning Commission will have a public hearing, and that's when not just the Civic Association, but also residents within the Civic Association will come to testify. The same thing will also occur during the county board meeting, and those conversations will happen. So there are a variety of inputs that you will have into this process.
Thank you.
All right, next we'll move to a question that drills down deeper into this from Kim, and also I think sort of upvoted by Morgan. Do you have a sense, and this is for VHC staff, have a sense of how you're going to maintain security and campus integrity? People wonder whether or not whether there is a need for particular security provisions for a facility of this type, and whether or not its proximity to schools also mandates or requires any additional measures of security.
We have safely been able to provide these services in the middle of a residential area for many years now. And so I feel very confident that security is really something that we are equipped to manage. There will be 24/7 security on site, certainly. Just the design and the construction will lend itself to safe and secure placement of the patients and the enclosure for the outdoor space that they'll be able to enjoy as well. So, from that type of security perspective, I really feel confident that we have that. For the outpatient side, again, these are, uh, this population are in every walks of life, and they're the same people that you're going to the grocery store with, and other things throughout your day. So I think what's really nice about this setting is that we will have an intake and assessment area. So if there is someone who just really wants to just get checked out, they don't have an appointment anywhere, they just would like to be seen, then this will be a place for that. Those patients who are really cute that might show up at the airport or some other place, that those patients are going to continue to come to our emergency department. They'll get medically screened through the emergency department, and then there'll be safe transport to take them to this facility. So again, it's lots of different ways that we can ensure safety of this site, but really I feel like we have a really good plan in that regard.
I would just add, there's as Melody mentioned, safety and security of the site when it's operational, but we'll also have a very detailed plan during the construction phase to make sure the construction site is safe, and especially within or surrounded by a residential area. Jill mentioned the SPRC process, but we'll also have an opportunity for engagement by the community after the SPRC process as we move into the construction phase. As we did with the project here on the hospital campus, we meet with community groups on a regular basis and talk about what's happening with the site, give them sort of a 4-week look ahead and update them on how things are going, and then address any concerns or issues that they have on a regular basis.
Thank you, Adrian and Melody. It seems like along the same lines, we're getting a question about the outpatients. And, I think you've addressed, how you approach it from the facility standpoint. And I'll just say maybe perhaps from the community standpoint, one of the things that I hope that we should keep in mind are that people who are seeking outpatient treatment at this facility are people who are committed to their improved health and wellness. And we should not view them as a problem or a threat. I realize that's an opinion, that's a value judgment, but it's one I feel strongly about. And so while I can understand that we are always concerned about, the most vulnerable in our community, and children count as chief among those, the people who are going to become patients and clients at this facility, particularly at the outpatient level, are people who are, very much pursuing the path of overall wellness, and that's something that I hope that we can all support. Brandon, I want to turn it back to you, since you said that you had a few questions, and I know we only got to a couple of them.
Thank you, Chairman Dorsey. On the site planning and the site plan, there are a couple places around the RPA and easements that we would wonder if it's possible for the county to adjust. There's a corner of the VHC proposed area that juts into the RPA. I don't know if you could bring up, Bryna, if you could bring up the screen. Guess not. Oh, there she goes. If you can go up once, if you go up one slide, that shows the coloring there. There's that purplish pink corner that juts in. If there's a way that could be retained as county, but right there where that cursor is pointing. On top of that, the current design drawings for the RPA does not include the Moses Ball Spring. We would like to make sure that that remains protected as a source for wildlife when it comes to fresh water and protecting wildlife that lives there. as well as one of the features of our neighborhood that's enjoyed is there's a large sledding hill that is behind the property that is, well, when it does snow, which hopefully we'll have snow again someday, right there, that area is heavily used, not just by the Carlin community, but we see people travel far to use that sledding hill, and it would be advantageous for that to remain available, even as it's owned by private property and no longer owned by the county.
So I think perhaps if we can keep that last slide up for a second, I think it addresses the first two concerns that you raised, Brandon. So the Moses Ball site remains on the public portion that remains unencumbered by VHC's proposal. And the RPA, as you can see, VHC's project abuts but does not encroach on the RPA.
Yes.
And I'll leave it to maybe Adrian to address the thing that's known as the sledding hill before climate change.
Well, I guess it's the topography of the land probably does not make that developable, so we would not be able to extend out from that. So I don't see us ever being able to construct or change that area to our right as we look at the drawing.
Thank you, Adrian.
All right.
And Julie did write that DES recognizes the ball spring as part of the RPA, but it's not shown on any of the drawings.
Okay, so just still it's part of the portion that will remain for public use. So we're good there. All right, there are questions about the parking plan and people concerned that the number of spaces far exceeds the type of facility that you've outlined. So who wants to talk about that piece?
Well, I can start, Kristen.
Yeah.
Just, I guess, a couple of comments, both about parking and traffic as it relates to what we're planning to do. As Melody mentioned, this is behavioral health, but it's also inpatient rehab. Those two programs, we believe they're a good fit together. There are some synergies with having them at this location, in addition to allowing us to do much needed expansion to both those units. But they also just don't generate a lot of traffic. They're not like, I would say, our normal med-surg beds here on the hospital campus. So from a parking perspective, I guess one, from a traffic and impact to the surrounding community, we don't anticipate that there's going to be the equivalent traffic that you would see at a hospital. The other part of this is because it's not a lot of traffic, we don't need a lot of parking spaces. So I think the number that is out there, and I'll let Jill kind of give the more detailed response, is more reflective of what zoning would call for based on the building size, et cetera. But that's not what we would need. So I think it's more of a not to exceed type of way to look at this, as opposed to we would like to talk about what we could do to reduce it and get it down to a number that is more reflective of what we think we'll need.
Thank you, Adrian. I think you addressed that quite well. Oftentimes what we see is there's a tension between what our zoning ordinance requires and oftentimes these by right requirements are looking sort of worst case scenarios. And really, as we analyze what's going on in the use, it allows us to further refine. Adrian pointed out that this is, we wanted to ensure that we capped the number of parking spaces rather than, and sort of as an up to. But from a county perspective, we have an opportunity to share in this parking garage, which allows for some levels of creativity potentially for parking resources for the nature center, for example, or other such uses like that. Again, not necessarily sort of shifting where parking resources are, and providing and leveraging, quite truthfully, this underground parking facility.
All right, let's see. What else do we have here? Question about, will Medicaid patients have access to the same access to services as the private pay people who are private pay insured? Is there a particular ratio that you're targeting? What's the programmatic scenario to serve people who are on public insurance?
So this hospital will be tied to our hospital license, and so as such, will be bound by EMTALA and the access to services the same as they are today. So today we take patients in all our programs from all walks of life, regardless of the payer. And so the same will be true for this facility as well. And having that link to the license really ensure to everyone that the patients that are at the greatest risk will receive first access to treatment.
Thank you, Melody. And I see a question, a raised hand from Sue Campbell.
Hi. I can't see the slide, so but I wanted to say I was curious to know if you might anticipate any issues in the construction, since it is Carlin Springs, and we know that the spring comes up in the road, that the old hospital building had water issues in the basement. We know we all in this neighborhood have sump pumps and issues with water. And I don't know how far down the new hospital facility is going to go compared to the old one. And if you have any concerns about that. The other question I had was about the diesel tanks. Are you going to keep those? Are those going to be used? Are they taken out as part of the demo already? I don't know. That's it. Thank you.
Thank you, Sue.
I'll take that, Kristen.
Thank you.
I don't know, the demolition is being done by the county, so I don't know what they may have encountered. I know that the county has been very good in working with us to try to do the demolition in a manner that will feed into what we'd like to do on the site. And they've been very good about communicating with their progress on it so that we'll get information about what they encounter. The old hospital that was there had a level underground. As Melody mentioned, right now we're anticipating that this is just a single-story facility. The underground portion would be the garage. So water would be an issue in the garage, but there are things you can do to sort of protect that. At this point, I really can't tell you exactly what we think we're going to encounter. We're not sure, but we will obviously be very mindful of that and the impact that has on stormwater management.
Thank you. And as far as the diesel tank specifically, I do believe that those were intended to be scraped as part of the demolition. I can't give you a status of where that is at this point, but those were not going to remain. As far as my understanding. Are there any other questions? I don't see any
Christian,
additional.
There's a few more questions in the chat box.
Okay, let's go
yeah.
back to the chat box. A question from Naomi about, will you consider removing the 55+ age limit from the 14 beds on the main campus. Comment that so many people with severe mental illness under the age of 55 have illnesses like cardiovascular, respiratory, and other illnesses, and they could benefit by access to the 14 beds on the main campus. Melody, I'm gonna guess that's you.
Yeah. I'll say that, we always, assess every patient's individual needs. And so, you know, I don't envision that it'll be an age limit, so at a hard, fast rule. Certainly, if a patient fits the medical needs for the unit, then we would evaluate that along with all the other factors. In addition, we also know because inpatient rehab patients are generally have medical issues as well. In the new hospital, we anticipate that we're probably going to have a hospitalist, and we're thinking through access to specialist care there as well. Again, if you're very ill, you're going to need to be in the hospital proper, but to maintain chronic conditions and other just medical issues that these patients might need. So it isn't that the new hospital will be devoid of any of that. We're just finding the right balance.
All right. And a question about why is the county paying for demolition instead of VHC? I think I should take that one. So before this proposal from VHC, Arlington still is the owner of the property, and as such is responsible for keeping it in a state of habitable repair. And scraping the site of the old facility was part of the plan that we had to execute, with the full thought that this would be a fully public site in perpetuity. In the interim, during the portion from which we approved a demolition contract and began that work, we started engaging with VHC on this proposal. No reason to stop that demolition. It ought to continue. The contract has been awarded, and work is ongoing. The work that the money that Arlington County puts into it will be part of the conversation that will inform the purchase and sale agreement that will ultimately accompany entitlement of this site. So I'll just leave it at that. Any consideration from the county towards a long-term lease instead of a sale? Yes, but negotiations identified this as the most desirable option for all parties. Question from Naomi: would like to see more of the psych and beds in private rooms. Building is currently 2-story. Will you consider making a 2-story building or putting?
Intensive outpatient.
Got it. Thank you, Brenna. Thank you. Melody, can you see that?
Yeah, I
Like,
can.
okay,
Sorry,
great.
I had to hit my mute button. So again, as we work through the design of this building, we are evaluating if, we could plan for future expansion. We are hesitant to add too many beds. The state has really struggled with just keeping their beds. And what we don't want to do is make a building that's so large that this facility becomes the bed of last resort for the state of Virginia. That's not what we think is the right thing for this area or our hospital. So it is very important that we keep all the programs together. I don't think that that we would consider moving those other programs off of the Carlin Springs site. But we are again, continually looking at the number of beds we need, and that private to semi-private room right now, it's about 60% private rooms, which again, not every patient should be in a private room for safety and other reasons. So we feel like that kind of strikes the right balance, but we'll continue to stay open to ideas as we engage others.
Okay, this doesn't sound like an early conversation for public engagement. It seems like plans have been underway for a long time. Okay, I thought we tried to address this earlier. It actually is quite early. This is a conceptual plan. In order for any conceptual plan to be brought forth for the public from VHC side, they have to get approval from their board to do so. So there has to be a fair amount of thought into what would occur. You just don't have ideas that germinate instantly and are therefore put out for public conversation. So there's always going to be a degree of thought beforehand. What we have long established as part of the community conversation in Arlington is about the acute need for services in this space and the absolute lack of availability of services, particularly for adolescents. So these have been long-standing community priorities. What is recent is a proposal to actually meet the needs. And so at the point at which this became something that went from an idea to something that VHC Health could fully get behind, there was the engagement with the county, and then soon thereafter, we are where we are beginning this engagement. So I know it appears like a lot has been thought about. That's true, but that's by design and by necessity. But at this point, there's so many areas that the public can meaningfully shape this project on. We've talked about the SPRC and all of the ways in which we can think about how this relates to the existing neighborhood, the environmental resources, the architectural look and feel, the mitigations to deal with any traffic or other issues. The so much that we need your engagement on in the months ahead. So hopefully you do not feel discouraged that you haven't had an opportunity to think about this from the ground up, but that is a reality of what we're dealing with.
Christian, if I may just add, and Jill, maybe you can just add on. Jill mentioned that there's a representative from Nearby Neighborhoods Association on the SPRC and other stakeholders. Beyond the SPRC process, the committee, Jill, maybe you could just elaborate again on how people that aren't sitting at the table can still engage and be part of that process.
Sure, Brenna, thank you so much. There has been some discussion, and again, we're at the sort of the nascent phase of defining exactly what the engagement strategy will be as this moves into the site plan review process, including potentially hosting either virtually or in a hybrid format or in person, an open house of sorts. For people to have these conversations as one point. Two, as I had mentioned, again, for that feedback of online engagement. And so there's a feedback form in which people can fill things out. Oftentimes there, in addition to public testimony, sometimes letters are sent to our planning commission as well as staff. There will be a planner that is assigned to this particular project in CPHD. And oftentimes, I believe our county board office receives letters in addition to our testimony. And finally, I think I think VHC has been willing to listen to comments from our community as well. So again, there's a variety of different points. Thank you for the timeline, Brennan. I think this is helpful to understand as when this happens and these points of engagement.
Yeah, so just to reinforce, the site plan review process won't even start probably until the summer. So this is really the very first conversation with the broad community. And the things that you're bringing here, I think, are incredibly helpful for both our planning team and VHC team. So thank you for bringing all of these points forward, because it helps as we move forward. But just to keep the timeline in mind, we're a long way off from that intensive engagement period.
See hands from Julie Lee and then Sue Campbell again.
Okay, thank you. I just did want to circle back to the issue about security, because I do want to reinforce, as has been said, The communities around this property are very supportive of this wellness facility, and we have stated that not only today but in previous meetings. And all of us, I think, or most of us, have been had some family member or been impacted or touched in some way by we know someone that has had to seek and wanted to seek mental wellness, and we think that this is a wonderful facility, but we do believe that our concerns are real about how patients are discharged from the inpatient facility, as well as how patients who are desiring mental wellness and mental health and you know, treatment that will be offered here. We just want to make sure, and we'll want to continue this conversation about how patients will arrive and depart, whether they are inpatient patients or outpatients. And so I don't think it is something that should be dismissed. We're not besmirching anyone who is seeking mental health. We support this, but we just feel that there are issues, especially because of the children walking to and from the school, the proximity to the 3 schools, that this is something that needs to be, there needs to be a level of reassurance that this is on your radar and you understand how patients are coming and going.
Okay, thank you. Sue.
Oh, hi. Yeah, I really appreciate you having this forum for us to have our first questions. And I thought of 10 more questions, but we definitely might want to consider looking at the road, the sidewalk, since, not everyone is going to be driven to this facility if there's outpatient. People are coming from all over, and we already have tremendous issues with safety and the children from going to Kenmore. So that's another, something to think about. But yeah, we really appreciate being able to talk to you guys and ask you some questions. Thanks so much.
Thank you.
There's a question in here about the idea of doing a site visit. I think, let's keep talking. Especially as spring comes. But and we are able to get down there, but I would think that at some point we'll be able to do that kind of site visit and walk through. I don't know what the timing will be, but let's keep that on the table and keep talking. Jill, does that work for you, Adrian?
It does. Oftentimes that's sort of part of a site plan process. I know we switched to more of a virtual walkthrough, but recognizing this site has some topography that isn't necessarily realized as easily virtually, it might be an opportunity to get out there.
I'm always open to a walk in Glen Carlin.
Very good.
We got a couple
Brandon.
more hands, and it's 8:45. So Christian, I want to make sure we get to everyone, but looks like we just have a couple more hands.
Yes, Brandon.
Thank you again, Chairman Dorsey. A community concern that has been put forth regarding the RPA and diversity of animal, making sure that, and then this has been brought up before, but bird-friendly and animal-friendly building and site. There's quite a diverse set of species that use that RPA area, and the demolition has been very good with controlling runoff, controlling debris mitigation, and we want to ensure that that continues with construction as well. So I just wanted to bring that forward from Glen Carlin and from the Forest Glen Association. On top of that is the additional usage of the county site. I know that it's a long way off, but we want to be heavily involved with what might be placed there and making sure that it's congruous to the Long Branch Nature Center area and the greater neighborhood. I recall at one point there was even discussion about putting a heavy equipment or as a overflow site for trucks for the fire department, and I hope that's still not something in consideration in the future. I've also heard rumors about AWLA wanting that site. I would really like to have further discussions with the county when it comes to future use. You say it's 10 years off. 10 years off happens in a blink of an eye. So I really would like those considerations to be brought forth earlier rather than later.
Sure. Thank you, Brandon. And were there any other hands, Bryna, that you saw?
I'm looking. I don't see any other hands. I'm just gonna check the chat to make sure we just got to everyone's questions.
I do believe we did.
Well, this is, I mean, so helpful and so insightful. Oh, we have one more from Suzanne.
Sorry, I know.
Just under the wire. Just under the wire.
I know. I'll let everyone go. Just a very quick thing to say. When you do the site visit, please include 6th Street South on your walkthrough, so you can see the perspective from the community and the houses that are here. And second, not for the VHC folks, but for the county, can you please work with your contractors on securing the site? We have had to call the cops a few nights when we hear folks rummaging around, maybe trying to steal copper pipes in the current facility. So if you can just keep an eye on that, we'd appreciate it.
We will.
And thank you for your time, and thanks for the engagement. And I'm happy to be volunteered to Barb and I both to be engaged in further conversation.
This is great. Thank you, Christian. I'm going to let you wrap it up here, and my thanks to everyone.
And that's really the sum total of my comments, is to really thank you all for joining us. You know, I think that these early opportunities to start to surface some of the things that are going to need to be addressed as part of the forthcoming public engagement processes are always a good thing. Better gives all stakeholders involved, particularly VHC Health, as they are planning the building in Arlington County, as we have responsibility for the future adjacent site, assuming that this goes through. It's just very useful to have these things thought of near the very beginning. So thank you all for your concerns. I think the SPRC will prove quite fruitful for addressing the things that are top of mind for you tonight. But of course, as things evolve, as you think about them more, we welcome your sustained engagement as we hopefully work towards an efficient delivery of a real vital service in our community. And, you know, if there seems to be a bit of anxiousness in order to bring this to bear, there is. The needs are quite acute. We feel it from the governmental side. We see it in headlines as they affect our youth, and we know it as it affects people who are part of our neighborhoods and families. So we thank you all, and we hope that you will continue to be constructive engagers as this process moves forward. And as always, you'll certainly let us know when things are of concern, or if you have great ideas about how we can move forward with this. So thank you all. We are officially adjourned. And thanks to all of the presenters for making their time tonight. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks,
Thank you
everyone.
very much.
Thank you. Have a good night.
Good night.
Good night. Thank you.